Okay, in this video I'm going to be talking about pretty much every book that's helped me. I'm going to start with one of the first books that I've read, The 4-Hour Workweek. I'm going to breeze through the ones that I've mentioned loads of times. So this book taught me that you should not be working in a environment in which your input equals output. If you are judged on your input equals input is like the work that you're doing, right? So if you're working in customer service, the work that you do for an hour gets you the output of £8. So if we times the input by 40 hours a week, then you'll get the output, which is 8 times 40, which is 320. So £320 a week. And this is the book that really, I read this before I had even worked like a full-time job or anything. I read this just before I got my first full-time job. And this book, along with another one called The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. They're the first two books that I read, and they were books on entrepreneurship and making money because I just graduated from university. I was trying to figure out like what the fuck to do in my life. And they were a fantastic, honestly, like a 10 out of 10 introduction into starting a business and sort of branching away from the 9-to-5 rat race. The 4-Hour Workweek tells you how to heavily reduce your work hours so that you have more freedom. The book alongside this is, I don't have like a physical copy, but it's The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. And that one, especially if you're like somewhat of a young person and you're a bit clueless in terms of businesses. So you've heard, everyone say like, okay, make a business, but you're like, what the fuck does that really even mean? Like how do you know like which business to do? Like how do businesses actually work? What's a good business? What if you're completely clueless, The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. So MJ DeMarco is an author who's just like the go-to guy for things of like escaping the rat race with making a business. In The Millionaire Fastlane, he breaks down the principles of good quality business that can last and can make a lot of money. And I'm not going to remember all of them right now, but it's like an analogy called CENTS. CENTS. And so it's like control, entry, I don't know, but like, you get what I mean? So it's just like principles that you can follow. And so if you're into business right now, I highly recommend The 4-Hour Workweek and The Millionaire Fastlane. I've mentioned those two books so many times on my channel, so you can tell like I really vouch for those books. The third book that I ever read was The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. I remember reading this book when I was down bad, depression, everything. This was just before I moved back home to Warrington. So I was living with my girlfriend at the time, and I was smoking weed all day, just living like a fucking like weirdo. And I literally remember this book. Every single time I would sit down to read this book, it felt like I got like quite a life-changing insight. It was like a big struggle to read at that time. I'm not gonna lie. When you've got mental health problems, when you're high all the time, when you're eating shit food and your brain's just like fucked. It was always a struggle to try and sit down and read this book, but every single time I did, I remember I would literally be in awe of like the knowledge and the insights that I would get from here. I've wanted to reread the book many times, but when I do try and reread it, it kind of has like a very like, it's obvious now. So if you're like down bad, this book might help you, but if you're kind of like quite a healthy, productive person, you might not really need this book because you already have like these mental models inside of your mind. But this one specifically, there was one huge insight that really changed my life, which was that Mark Manson, the author of this book, said that no matter what you choose, you're going to have to experience problems. You're just going to have to be like a lifelong problem solver. It's time now to not pick the rewards that we want of a certain endeavor, because that leaves you clueless. If you only think of the rewards that you want, the benefits that you want from these two sports or these two jobs, it's incredibly hard to choose. Because, okay, you could be a YouTuber or you could be a rapper, and like, or you could get really famous and really rich from both of them, and you could get really, you know what I mean? The better thing to make decisions is to think about what kind of problem that you want to choose. And this really like changed it all for me, because at this point I was trying a bunch of different businesses. Obviously I read The 4-Hour Workweek, The Millionaire Fastlane, and so I was trying to think, okay, maybe I could like code my own apps, maybe I could write ebooks, I could be like an author or something, and I could be a drop shipper. And I tried to be a fucking rapper as well, and I was making a couple of YouTube videos. And at this point of the book, I literally just sat down and said, okay, which problems do I want to solve? And for me, straight away, it was the YouTube. It was like the problems that arise with YouTube, which namely at the time was just problems in terms of like the software that you'd use to like edit videos, because sometimes it'd crash because I didn't pay for that shit. I like pirated it, so every now and then it would crash. And it really just hit me like, yeah, like that's a problem that I can overcome. if there's a crash or if there's like an error in this software, I can just go and search up some like Akash from Tech India who's going to tell me about problem 337 or something, and like that's an easy problem to fix. At the time, I didn't spend too much time thinking about this. It probably would have been worthwhile, but I also did acknowledge that, oh yeah, like maybe I'll get like hate comments, and like I don't really mind about that because maybe it's like an opportunity to grow. But at least this book really did help me at the time. So I moved back home May 2020, and I think pretty much the first book that I read when I moved back to Warrington was How to Win Friends and Influence People. This is like the Bible of social skills, and you might not think that you need this book because you've already got a couple of friends and everything. Just trust me when I say, just read it. Just read this fucking book. Like, I had this book 2 years before that point when I actually read it. Like, I literally had this book in university. I bought it because so many people online were talking about it. I read the first few pages and I'm like, okay, this is basic. He's giving like old examples, and like I don't need to be told not to criticize or condemn people. I don't need to be told to like complain or to smile. When you just invest heavily into this book and you just think, okay, Dale Carnegie is like one of the first people who ever spoke about self-improvement. People call him like the godfather of self-improvement for a reason. If you just place your trust in this, and even though it seems like obvious, it's like, okay, smile, use the person's name, firm handshake, you know, it's like basic shit. But when you invest in a book, it just gets ingrained in your mind. And at least for me, I always thought that I had pretty good social skills. I lived like the party life inside of university. I was the center of like the certain social circle that I was in because I was hosting the parties. I was the one who was like leading the nights and, you know, choosing where to go and everything. And so I had this huge arrogance that I didn't need to know these fucking social skill tips. And when I tell you that reading this book and implementing these tips like truly changed my life, you should probably be thinking like, yeah, like maybe if Hamza's, you know, he was living the party lifestyle and everything, maybe his social skills probably would have been better than mine because I've just spent 2 years inside over COVID. It's a very good basic refresher, and there's a few principles. One of the things I really liked about this book that I've still got like these little things is that there's just like a page that literally just tells you the principles, which is like in a nutshell. So it's in a nutshell, 6 ways to make people like you. Principle number 1, become genuinely interested in other people. Now that seems like, when you've heard me say that, it seems just like common sense, like, okay, become interested in other people. But when you're reading the principle and you're really like, you sit there and think, okay, am I using this in my life? At least for me, I was like, you know what, like, I'm not. Like, I don't feel like I've been really, really interested in other people recently. I feel like I've made it all about me because I love the center of attention, but everyone feels like that. When you're the one random guy out of a random group, like a big group, who's literally thinking, oh yeah, let me, like, you know, be interested in other people, let me ask them loads of questions and see like what they've got to teach me or something, you're gonna stand out. People are gonna love talking to you. Still to this day, I find myself like needing to like rethink of these principles. Very, very good book, but I think it's often overlooked by a bunch of people who have like this huge fucking ego that they think they don't need to like learn this stuff. So at about this point now, May/June 2020, this is when I've started reading books. And so I use it as a computer monitor stand, but I've got a book that I read here. So I started YouTube, and I probably read this one a couple of months later, but it's just the one that I've got here right now. It's just Influencer by... There's dust everywhere, bro. Influencer by Joseph Grenny Kerry Patterson. So when I started YouTube, I got into reading, and I wanted to start reading based on, because I was giving people advice, and I thought, okay, imagine if I actually learn how to like make people take my advice. Like, that would be some next level shit. If I could be the guy who I tell you, okay, meditate and exercise, but I say it in a certain way that actually gets you to meditate and exercise. That's a $1 million business right there. If I can be the one to influence you to get onto the good habits. So I looked specifically for books on influence, and there was a couple of big ones. There's a book, I believe it's on it's Influence by Robert Cardino, something like that. It's a really big famous book. I didn't really like that one. This is like a very quite underground book. It's made for like teachers or anything, but like it's a very, very easy read with like nice stories. And the principles are that to influence people, there's like a bunch of different categories that you can focus on. But the main thing that you can do, at least as a content creator, in my opinion, in like my example, is on personal motivation. If I can motivate you to go and do an action, then you'll do it. There's other things, like they went into detail. So for example, there's like structural influence, there's societal influence. Obviously they're like, you know, things that we're probably not considering right now. But the page is falling out and everything, but you can kind of tell that I've been taking the advice from this. So to motivate someone, one of the best tactics is to tell meaningful stories. That's why, like, this literally reading this book completely changed the formula of my videos, because before I would start the video like reading from a fucking script and be like, the best way to cure back pain is, I'd be just saying some bullshit. When I read this book, I realized, yeah, like, every single time that I've been like moved by a video, it's because they had like a storyline. Like, we are so motivated by stories. I tell a story in every single one of my videos now. I don't just tell you like, oh yeah, you should meditate. I say, oh yeah, before I started meditating, this is what life was like. But then I found meditation, but then it didn't work. But then I really tried to make it work, and it worked. And this is what life is like now. You tell a story, you change someone's life. I really like this book. It's not one that I'd reread because it's quite basic, and it's just kind of like, yeah, just, motivate them and you give them experiences, tell them stories. But it's quite like a nice introduction into influence and a behavior change into someone. If you're doing work similar to me, so if you're a YouTuber, a content creator, if you're a teacher, if you're in anything where you have to influence people, and of course, like, influence, do use it literally 24/7 anyway. But I'd say if you're going to influence like people to be better, if you're going to influence like an audience, I'd highly recommend this book. It's Influencer by Joseph Greene, Kerry Patterson, and like a couple of other people. I read this book afterwards as well. So that influencer book and this book is what I use for my monitor. Just dust everywhere. I'm gonna clean my room, man. Okay. So this is The Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McEwen. So this is kind of like an interesting book, kind of like different to what you'd expect, because so far it's just been like, self-improvement type of books. This is based on the real way that we're supposed to be breathing, which is very different from how most of us breathe right now. Breathing is so overlooked. And this book, I've read a recent book as well. I've read like another book on breathing recently, which we'll discuss. But if you are someone who's like a mouth breather, if you're someone who doesn't really sleep well, books like this will change your life. Like, there's a real like healthy way to breathe, and probably at least 50% of people who are watching this aren't breathing like that. A lot of us breathe from our mouths because we just, like, you can see, like, I'm taking a breath. One, it's a habit. Two, your nose kind of gets blocked sometimes, so you kind of need to. Three, the modern food that we have just kind of fucks up like the whole system and everything. Of course, like, I don't remember most of the science, but the general idea is like modern life is just terrible for breathing, and anything that's terrible for breathing truly fucks up your health a lot more than you'd think. You'd think, okay, it's not that important, it's only to do with like cardiovascular skill, like lung capacity or something. It goes way further than that. In the new book that I read on this just a month ago called Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art, I don't know who it's by, there's so much research to show that mouth breathing completely fucks up your health. It's actually one of those like weird things that like truly ruins your life, but it's so overlooked. So the gist is, stop mouth breathing, and you might start complaining and say, wait, but like, I can't breathe from my nose, so I have to breathe from my mouth. We're supposed to breathe a lot less. Like, the issue right now, of course, air pollution and everything, the quality of the air around us is very, very bad. But one of the things that we can control as an individual person is the quantity of the air that we breathe, and we breathe too much. So we inhale way too fast because we're all mindless. You're like, if you become aware of this right now, you might be in disbelief, but if you become aware of this, you'll actually be shocked. If you're, you become, you're like daydreaming, you're going through your day, whatever, you're not focused on this, and then you get that thought of, oh yeah, let me like, breathe properly. You'll realize that for the last while, you've been breathing like you've got anxiety. Like, we breathe like this, like, even if you're not a mouth breather, like, you're watching this video and you think you're the exemption. Even though I'm saying this right now, you still think you're the exemption, and you think that I'm not talking to you. I'm telling you right now, the overwhelming majority of people that I've been around breathe wrong. The overwhelming majority of people that I've been around breathe wrong. I've spent some like good time around people, like with girls that I've like been on dates with and like nights out with and like stayed over like in hotels. And so if you're sleeping next to someone, you can really become aware of what their breathing patterns are, right? I'm telling you right now, since I've been reading this book and another book on breathing, I'm like really clued up on like who's breathing properly. And I'm telling you, it's not that many people. It's really like, I'm not even the perfect example of this, because obviously like my brain, like I'm still trying to train this shit as well. But the majority of people that I come across breathe like this. The right way to breathe is with a very soft inhale, as much as your nose will allow you. So if your nose is stuffy and you think, wait, no, I can't do this, Hamza, you're like, this is bullshit because my nose is stuffy, so I have to breathe from my mouth. How much you can breathe from your nose is how much you're supposed to. Breathing from your nose is kind of like a skill. And so if you haven't been leveling up this skill for a while, you're going to be like a low level in this skill to begin with, and you're going to be shit at it first. You have to keep going through the trials and tribulations. It's kind of like you deserve to suffer. You deserve to have that awkward, like, you know, that bullshit of like you can't breathe properly and everything, and that feeling of like air hunger, which Patrick McEwen really nails into you, and he says the feeling of air hunger is what we need. So we should be breathing so slow and so peacefully that we actually do get a sense of like the air hunger, that we get like a sense of breathlessness. So he said the perfect breath, which actually lines up with the perfect breath from the other book that I mentioned, Breath, The New Science of the Lost Art, is about a 5 to 6 second soft, very soft, slow inhale and a very, very extended 5 to 6 second exhale. Breathing from the diaphragm. That's really, really important. A lot of people are chest breathers as well. And for me, Patrick McEwen really, really made a simple exercise to just start breathing from your diaphragm. But just put your hand there, put your hand on your stomach, and just start guiding it out. Guide your stomach out as you breathe. As you breathe in, push it out. Exhale, it comes in. Breathe in, push out. Exhale, comes in. Really good book. This book's like fucking thick. And he goes into, at first, you know, obviously it's just one of those books where he just kind of like tells you about the thing. But then he goes on to give you so much evidence and like data and everything of like how breathing is literally like the number one thing that we're all missing. And it's literally, it'll improve your diet, it'll improve your body composition, your physical injury, and so many random things. It's one of those things where like, you know, you read the book on like a certain topic, like walking, and then you think like, oh fuck, like the amount of research this motherfucker's put in, it's like, this is the most important thing ever. That's what this book is like. So it was kind of like a hard read. It was sometimes when I would be reading it and I had to like reread the paragraph because he uses quite like advanced terminology and everything. It's a very good book and I recommend it. Mostly, honestly, if you're not too bothered about this, then fair enough. But I recommend it specifically for the people who have trouble breathing, who mouth breathe and know that they mouth breathe and they want to stop mouth breathing. And also if you have trouble sleeping, because I would say probably the most common reason for trouble sleeping, not getting to sleep, but I mean like staying asleep and you probably wake up feeling quite sick and you've got like a dry throat and everything, is how you breathe. And he really goes into it in detail. So I got those books, and then this might not be all be in order. I've had this book for a while, The 48 Laws of Power. I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't say that this is like that. It's hard to say, because for example, like this was a random page, right? But this law number 7, get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. Now, technically that's a law of power, right? Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. But this is totally outdated. This would have worked 100%. This would have worked 50 years ago, 100 years ago. You're the guy in the factory or anything, and you know the factory's pumped out the #1 production. Then you're gonna come there and take the recognition 100%. But in the new age of business, this type of shit doesn't work. This type of shit actually gets you hated on. Imagine if like I completely acted in a way that showed you that like my editors were worthless and that it's only me. I'm a one-man army. I wouldn't actually get more power from that. If anything, I'd have power stripped away from me because people would like me less. Because right now we're becoming a lot more like social and like nice to each other. We're collaborating a lot more. And so a lot of like a bunch of these laws are quite dry and quite outdated. Like they don't seem to work, but a couple of them do absolutely work. And there was a couple that I wonder if you could find them. Like, okay, so like a standard one is always say less than necessary. I thought about this law just a few days ago. That's a standard. That's like a timely one. Always say less than necessary. Now, of course, it's kind of odd because I could have made this video like 10 minutes long. It's probably going to be more like an hour. So saying more than necessary is kind of helpful here. So obviously you've got to use your intuition to think, you know, when this is useful. But in terms of relationships, in terms of especially with dating, for example, law number 4, always say less than necessary, has done me very, very well. Win through your actions, never through wrong. This is really good. I'm not gonna lie. It's one of those books that like you're not supposed to read cover to cover. That's what, like, I should actually explain this. This is kind of a tangent. Maybe, like, someone can timestamp this or something. Oh, yeah, I was going to say, like, someone please timestamp this shit, because I'm not going to, like, rewatch this video. But if anyone's going through the vid, then just kind of, like, leave timestamps. There's a right way to read books, and I don't think many people are actually reading books in the right way. You're not supposed, like, books aren't sacred. It's, like, it's nothing. You're not supposed to read a book like your dumb, broke teachers told you to read. The education system ruined fucking learning. Like, the education system has ruined education. Reading is how you get education, but those motherfuckers have convinced you that you get this book as an assignment, you read it front to back, and you have to answer questions and take notes. That's fucking bullshit. If you're highlighting when you're reading, you're just stupid. That shit doesn't do anything. Fuck you. Shut the fuck up. Oh, but shut the fuck up. Highlighting when you're reading, stupid. Reading a book from start to finish is stupid. You're not supposed to read like that. If it's a book that you've already read before, you really like it. If it's like a book that really, really captures your interest, fair enough. But if you force yourself to read a book from start to finish, if you're a fucking dick and you ask me how many books I read a year, or if you make one of those fucking dumbass YouTubers who like, oh, but reading 52 books last year, here's what shut the fuck up. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with this fucking, like, this culture of people, like, people thinking that it's like a medal that I read a book a week. So? How much did you learn, dumbass? Not much. Because you're literally just skimming the fucking page, like, you're not even learning. You're just reading for the sake of the fucking ego boost. If you want to learn from this shit, you don't read it like you did in school. You don't read it like most people do. You get an interest. For example, in here, you're interested right now in reducing your workload, so you go to the part where he talks about that, you're curious of it, and you learn that. Boom, now you're done with it. Law on this, if you like get this and you're like, oh, I'm gonna read the 48 laws of power, law number 1, you're a dumbass. What you do is you go to the preface when he's listed every single one, and you see which one captivates your attention right now. Recreate yourself. That's the one for me, Law 25. So I would go straight to Law 25 and I would read that one and I would contemplate. I would sit here and think, oh yeah, like, you know, he said to recreate yourself and he gave me this story. How can I use that right now? If you're sat here, Law 1, Law 2, all the way to Law 48, trust me when I say you're not learning anything. Trust me when I say you're doing it for fucking ego. Like, reading is such a beautiful thing, but the overwhelming majority of people just read in the totally wrong way and then they don't get any benefit from it. That's a side tangent, but honestly, it's so incredibly important because you need to be taught how to actually fucking read. And school just ruined this shit for us. But yeah, side note, the 48 Laws of Power is a good-ass book. So then, I believe at this point is when I got my Kindle, so we can go on this now. I wonder if I plug my charger. This camera's kind of trash, bro. It's gonna die now. If I plug this in, like, it's not even gonna do anything. Okay, let's go. So I'm going all the way back on my Kindle, and I read The Power of Now. See that bottom one, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. To be honest, I didn't really vibe with it that much, but I feel like I was quite new to meditation at the time, so I was planning to reread it soon, so I might like it more. But it was very, very promoted, but I didn't really like get that much insight from it. Although it did just highlight the importance of presence and mindfulness, which I guess, like, you know, probably helped me snowball my mindfulness training to take it more seriously. The earliest book I have on here, which I feel like helped me, is The E-Myth Revisited. Very, very interesting book. The E-Myth Revisited by Michael E. Gerbera. And it's this idea that making a business is not the same as doing the task. So he gives the story, which I'm sure we've all heard of. Let's say there's a builder, like a bricklayer, or, you know, like a carpenter, one of those random trades, right? And he's employed by someone, he's doing it, and he's like, oh, you know what? Like, I should be self-employed. I should have my own business. So he makes his own business, and it's actually a negative compared to his life previously, because now his boss, he's got the worst boss in the world, which is himself. And all he has is just extra responsibility and extra tasks. What he's done is the wrong thing, which a lot of brown people do, which is that they make a business just to give themselves a job. That is not the point of a business. That is not what you do when you're trying to, like, start like a company or something. That's stupid as fuck. You don't make a business to give yourself a job. You make a business to give other people jobs so that they do the work for you and you sit back and you, like, kind of like you're the one who takes the risk and that has all the leverage. Of course, you know, like, so for example, with this business I'm doing right now, no one can do this work, which is like being on the camera, because you're here for Hamza, right? But I've outsourced most of the tasks to the point that now all that's left is actually the fun task that I wanted to do in the first place. So the E-Myth Revisited, it goes through almost in like a story fashion of the right way to create a business, and like, you know, the right mindset to have and the right need for the business. And he says that most people just don't do it in the right way because they just give themselves a job. So another example is, for example, the brown guy who creates a business where it's like owning a shop, like a corner store. He's just got a shitty job now. He's got like a very, very like poor level job that he's not proud of. Someone's gonna, oh man, he's working out. Shut the fuck up, okay? Like, he's not proud of it. He's dealing with assholes. My dad owned a shop. We like fucking did child slave labor there, bro. I'm telling you right now, it's not like a good place to be. Oh, but he's working hard. Shut the fuck up, okay? You just, when you make a business like that, you've just given yourself a job, and usually that job is actually quite like a low level job. It's the same as, for example, just like, it's a bunch of fucking low level businesses, right? They're not businesses. You've just employed yourself, and of course, you know that it's a job that you've got right now and you're making money for enough, you know, we'll be grateful. But the idea is that you can create such a beautiful business when you do it in the right way. I'm trying to recount some of the learning lessons here, but the general gist for me was to make sure that you're like employing people in a very standardized, like a franchise fashion. That's actually, so I read this book, and that's when I got my first video editor, Sam, and he still like tells this story every now and then where I was his first client. So he went on the website Fiverr to, you know, sell his services as a video editor. I was his first client, and I literally wrote up like a document of instructions that I wanted him to follow, like a step-by-step, do this checklist and everything, like 25 points of like, do exactly this, and render it with this setting, this, upload it here, do this, exactly like this. Because my idea was, which I got from this, is to have like a system in which other people, like, you can franchise your business. So I thought, okay, the bit that I can't franchise like myself or anything, but the bit I can franchise is the video editor. I didn't realize at the time that Sam was like the first video editor, like the proper first video editor that I got, and who would actually stay around. Actually, no. Actually, you know what? I had a bunch of brown people before Sam, actually. So on Fiverr, I was looking for people to be my video editor, and I had the idea, which I got from the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, which was to outsource to a country like Pakistan. In a sense that, one, it's like lower wages, but two, it almost gave me like a sense of fulfillment, because, you know, I'm giving them a job and everything, and they're getting like a fair amount of money per hour. The work from them, quite frankly, was just subpar, like completely subpar, and there wasn't like a good working relationship. But as I was going through those original editors that I got from Fiverr doing random videos, I was updating this system, like this document. So by giving everyone the same document of instructions, it was a very standardized, like systemized, franchised process. And you can see you're taking a business like very, very seriously when you do shit like this. So the idea is that for you, if you're branching into like a business, number one, make sure it's the right type of business. Make sure it's a business where you employ people and you haven't just employed yourself. And two, standardize and systemize employing people to do the tasks that you want. McDonald's does this perfectly. It's all like a clear-cut franchise. My camera's gonna die. BRB. Okay, apologies for that. My camera just died. I swear this tripod's a bit unequal. But yeah, that was the E-Myth Revisited. The next one we have is, so this is now about the time when I actually started like selling things from YouTube, and I read the book, The Psychology of Selling by Brian Tracy, that one in the top middle. The Psychology of Selling by Brian Tracy. This was a fantastic book. This was like essentially a fundamental basic introduction to sales. And you've probably heard before, like, you know, sales is such an important skill. Like the way that you learn sales is kind of like everything else, but it seems like quite a weird, interesting topic that you really want to learn, but you're just kind of like unsure how to do it. You read a book like this, The Psychology of Selling by Brian Tracy, and you just get told like random things that stay in your mind, and some of the fundamental stuff is like you're literally just serving the customer. You're just trying to help them. So, you know, that bullshit of like, oh, like, sell me this pen, and you're supposed to think of something like, you know, fancy or something. Really, the best example of, you know, sell me this pen, or like, you know, I'm trying to sell you this pen, is like, I'll ask you, like, do you want to buy a pen? Are you in the market to buy a pen? If the guy says like, no, I don't want to buy it, okay, then you leave it. Sales is not about some bullshit like manipulation tactics where you're like, oh, let me convince you to buy this pen, and this pen was signed by thingy, and some like weird clickbaity type of bullshit. It's literally just about serving the customer's needs. So the best salesman just ask a lot of questions. You've got to not see sales as something where it's like me versus you. And that's how I used to actually think of it. And honestly, this book and another one that we'll talk about really changed a lot for me. If I didn't read this book, I wouldn't be where I am right now, because it was the sales aspect, it was like the business aspect of YouTube that actually got me here, that actually got me interested, because I am an entrepreneur at heart. And so the idea with sales, like the basic fundamental stuff that I remember from this, is essentially, let's say you want to sell something to someone, like you've got a product that you're selling. You ask questions and you figure out what their hot spot is. You figure out what they're really, really interested in. So if I try and sell you right now, like this hair product, this like, wax to style your hair, and you want to buy one, right? So I'm asking you, instead of just saying, like, oh, do you want to buy this? Or, this has this and this and this and this. It's kind of like the same as the social skills that we learn from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Be interested in them, in the customer, not in yourself. So I could tell you, oh yeah, this hair product has like 53% beeswax or some bullshit. It's like, you're going to be bored. What I would be asking you is just questions like, oh yeah, what do you want to use this for? And you'll say, like, oh yeah, like I want to style my hair so it looks nice and attractive for my Instagram picture. Fuck you. I fucking hate that noise. Oh my God. And turn that shit off. We got a podcast coming live with Chris Williamson right now. Yeah, I might stop this video so I can share that vid, but so you'll tell me like, oh yeah, like you want to look better in your Instagram pictures, and that's like the thing that you get really excited for. Then I'll ask you another question like, oh yeah, like this is water, like rain resilient, and you're like, oh yeah, like whatever. A bad salesman would keep bringing up every feature point that he has. Like, oh yeah, it's water, this is water resilient. But you didn't give a fuck. What you really cared about was that you wanted better hair for Instagram pictures. So that's the point I would keep nailing down. And I'd like ask you, like, I'd hype you up for it. I'd be like, how much does that work for you? How many like followers do you have and everything? Do you think that this is going to help you quite a lot? You're going to style it in a certain way. We'll talk about the thing that you're really, really interested in. Then you close the sale. Then you say, yeah, like, why don't you just take it? So obviously I wasn't selling physical products when I read this book. I was selling my coaching. And at the time, my coaching was like pretty affordable, but it was starting to get to the point where it was like actually becoming like, a decent price. So when I first started my coaching, like my one-to-one coaching, my self-improvement coaching, I was charging less than minimum wage. I was charging about a couple pounds an hour, literally about half of what minimum wage is in the UK, because I was like doing it for fun. I was charging less than about half of minimum wage, and I was doing more than 1 hour for that rate. So it was the equivalent of literally like a pound or one or £2 per hour. That's what I was like doing, because I was just like staying on the call for like 2 hours with the guys and everything. I just became more and more business orientated, and I realized that's not like, there's no fucking future in like doing a fucking 2.5 hour call for like £5. And I started actually like not feeling bad. I think honestly a big part of sales is knowing that it is a moral thing to do. It is like, there is an absolute need for a salesman. You have a need. The salesman fulfills it by giving you the product, like, just showing you the product and telling you its features and everything that you needed. And sales, to be a salesman, to like sell, feels kind of dirty because of this idea of, like the sleazy car salesman and everything. But books like this really opened up my mind and thought like, yeah, like actually like it is a very positive thing to do. And I remember for months I was on this on and off type of mindset in terms of sales, trying to sell products to my customers. It was actually a random YouTuber called Casey Zander. So a fair amount of you guys might know him. He's like in the red pill masculine space. And I watched a random video of his where he talked about his products. He talked about learning sales, and he just said like, yeah, like he likes sales. He loves being able to like provide the value to his customers, to like provide, to sell them something that's going to help them. And that really like, it just made me click. And I was like, oh yeah, like you can view it as a positive thing. To sell someone a product that you've made that is going to help them, like you should feel very proud of that process. So the idea is like you make a product that you have a product that you're proud of, or a service that you're proud of that you think is going to help this person. You ask them questions. You're not just, like movies have really fucked us over. It like if you're trying to learn sales, movies have really shown you this dirty idea of like, oh yeah, pursue the sale and get the sale no matter what and be hard ass and stuff. Really being a good salesman in the modern day, especially when you can get like critiqued for it, and especially if you're attaching sales to like your personal brand like I am. If I sell too hard or in the wrong way, my brand's gonna get ruined and people will actually start to like dislike me for it, wouldn't they? The reason why like I'd say the overwhelming majority of people who watch my videos probably wouldn't consider me a salesman. I use sales techniques and everything, and I use marketing techniques, but I do it in such like a humble, very, very infrequent way that it doesn't seem to piss that many people. Of course, some knobheads come in and like, oh, Hamza only cares about, how the fuck do you get that idea from me that I only care about money? I've literally got videos of me just saying like, yeah, like it doesn't matter, just meditate instead and shit. And of course, like I need money for the business, but it's like one of the comments that really, this is kind of off point, but a comment it was on Discord. I don't think the guys even knew that I was like reading it, but I just really appreciate it. It was like some random guys who were just saying like, Hamza doesn't sell us his products nearly as much as he could do. Like he doesn't push us to like, and I was like, I was taken aback because when you do try and sell things online as your personal brand, people just dislike you for it. People love to buy, but they hate to be sold to. And this really, honestly, like really hurt me for a while because I never wanted to be seen as like a salesman, and like anytime someone would say like, oh, you know, you're just trying to sell us something, or Hamza's just trying to make money, it would really hurt because it's like, it was one of those where it was like, if it was completely false, it would probably not affect me, but the fact that like there is truth in it, like yes, I do want to make money. And for a long time, like a bunch of people, like a bunch of like viewers and everything, made me feel like honestly very bad for like wanting to make money from YouTube, from this business. And it's just certain key moments, like reading this book and watching that random Casey Zander video and these random guys on Discord and like a few conversations with Sam, that's really just made me feel more positive. And I'm like, yeah, like, but it is a business. Like I am a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I was an entrepreneur first and then a YouTuber second. And like I wanted to make not only just like, you know, like a humble income, I wanted to make a good amount of money. Like, come on, let's be fucking real with it right now. Like, apologies, hang on, my screen's just turned the nightlight thing on. You know, there's this like hype. I was in this lifestyle as well, but like it's so easy in the modern day to say like, oh, you know, I don't care about money, I just want to be happy. But it's like, why not both? Why not both? We need the level of confidence to actually just admit like, yeah, like I want to sell my product. I want to make a product that sells a lot. A lot of like people in the modern day think that that's vain, or you know, they'll dislike you for it. It's the same level of you saying like, oh yeah, I want to get muscular, and like, you know, some random like dick is just gonna say like, oh, you want to get muscular, that's because you've got a small dick, or that's because your ego is some bullshit. But it's like, yeah, why not, bro? People are making money, why not me? So books like this, honestly, like it truly changed the trajectory of my sort of status on YouTube, where I realized, yeah, there's good money to be made. And I'm telling you right now, this is the one boast I'm going to allow myself for this video, right? I'm a better entrepreneur who makes more money than a lot of YouTubers, big YouTubers. I make more money from my audience of like, you know, 230k than YouTubers who have like 1 million or 2 million do. And of course, you know, a lot of people will be able to say like, oh no, but I don't care about money. The thing is, you would happily take more money. So don't be a little bitch. You would happily like take more money if you could do, right? A big part of sales and a big part of making money is just honestly setting the intention to. And this book, and there was another book as well that we'll go on to, really dialed in this point of like your self-belief. Because however your parents managed their money and however they kind of interacted with you with money, you know, your parents gave you pocket money or they spoke about money, that you've got core beliefs inside of your mind that you aren't really that conscious of. And one of the interesting stories was we have like a pretty much an income limit that we feel comfortable with, and we'll rarely surpass that. And this fucking blew my mind, this story he told. And I'd assume it's a real story, but he was pretty much saying like some random salesman that he knew saw himself as like a $5,000 a year man. So $5,000 a year would have been like a big, this book's like 100 years old or 50 years old or something. So $5,000 a year would have been like a very good wage at the time. But like not high level, but like a good level, right? And the idea was he'd make like his amount, this salesman would make $5,000, and then he'd get sick afterwards. He'd make $5,000 and then he'd just like, you know, lose the mojo, lose the motivation to continue doing sales. Or he wouldn't be at $5,000, he'd be quite significantly underneath, but the year's about to end and suddenly he'd get to 5,000. It's kind of similar to, if you know of Parkinson's law, it's kind of similar to that, where it's like, you'll do the thing. It's hard to explain, but you can hopefully see like my fucking brain cells are trying to like be switched on here. But you will hit the income that you feel like you can hit. That's a good way of putting it, right? With sales, with just making money, you will make as much money as you feel like you can make. Now, you can't bullshit yourself. You can't just say, oh, I feel like I can make $1 million, because you don't fucking believe it. A lot of like young guys can do it. I see guys in both ends of the spectrum, and they're both autists. I see the guy who lives in India, but I gotta make that much money. Shut the fuck up, bro. You know, Hamza doesn't understand because I work a full time. Shut the fuck up. Why are you rejecting yourself? Why are you just giving yourself limits and beliefs? Or like Hamza wouldn't understand. Like, I'm arguing for you, you're arguing against you. Have some fucking respect for yourself, man. So there's these like small dick motherfuckers who are like, oh, but I couldn't make that much money. But then there's also like a bunch of these like pseudo big dick teenagers who are like, oh, but like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a millionaire. Like, I spoke to a lot of these guys in my early coaching days. I spoke to a lot of guys who had this bullshit of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make 5 million next year, Hamza, thinking that I'd be proud of them. I'm gonna be like the biggest rapper ever. Shut the fuck up, bro. Just shut the fuck up. Like, I'm all for being ambitious, but you can't fake this bullshit. And trust me when I say, like, if right now you're a broke dumbass little fucking dumb kid, you're not even like being productive. Let's say this guy wants to be a fucking dropshipper, but he's like barely working on it. He's like, then you don't deserve to say like, oh, I'm gonna make $1 million. No, you're not. I'm gonna be the best rapper, but you're barely making rap. So shut the fuck up. Like, yeah, you should be the goals that you set, and you know the limit that you set yourself of this like sort of subconscious like limit, this bar that you feel like you're worthy of. You should start to manually set this to a point that is reasonably unreasonable. Reasonably unreasonable. So if right now you're a broke dumbass student, your goal should be to make $5,000 to $10,000 in a couple of years per month. Let's say $10,000 within 2 years from now. So every month you're making $10,000 2 years from now. That's reasonably unreasonable. That's a lot of money. That's a good amount of money. And 2 years is like, that's reasonably it's unreasonable, but it's quite reasonable at the same time. Saying that, oh, but in 2 years I'm going to be no, you're not. You're not going to be a fucking millionaire, bro. Shut the fuck up. But at the same time, there's people who are just way too reasonable, and then they don't ever end up actually achieving that goal. So for this salesman, it was the 5,000 one. It's like, okay, even if you hit the reasonable goal, it's not that amazing. But for most people, when they do set a reasonable goal in sales, and a lot of young guys say like, oh, but Hamza, just, you know, stop all this business stuff. Just teach us how to make $100 a month online. You won't do it because it's not worth it. To make $100 a month, you have to work harder than if to make 5,000 to 10,000, literally. Because to make $100 a month, the only really, like, the way that these dumb little kids want me to answer is to hop onto fucking Fiverr and like do fucking child slave labor to make £2 an hour for 50 hours this month right now, and you'll get the ego boost. Like, oh yeah, I made $100, but you made £2 an hour. If it's too reasonable, if the bar like that you've set yourself of income is too low, you'll either won't do it, or you will, and then like your achievements just trash anyway. There's a book that's coming up. I'm surprised it's not already come up. Maybe like Kindle kind of like reorganizes them. But there's a book that's coming up, The Magic of Thinking Big. And the author of that book talks about the fact that big goals and small goals take about as much effort anyway. And I know that seems really crazy, but it's honestly true. Because a small goal has this extra mental load where you're quite resentful to do the work because you're like, I'm not even going to get that big of a benefit anyway. This is those motherfuckers, I've criticized this before. This is the guys who come into the gym and they say, oh, I don't want to get too big, I just want to get toned. Okay, well, you're not going to make any progress then. You're going to quit. Because when it starts getting difficult, when your muscles are fucking sore and you don't feel like going to the gym and it's raining outside, you're not going to show up because I just want to get toned. It's bullshit. Reasonably unreasonable was saying that, yeah, like, I want to build like the 10 out of 10 physique for me. Of the aesthetic V-taper, so 175 pounds at 6'1", like, that's reasonably unreasonable. But my mindset was like, yeah, in 10 years. I'm pretty much there. I'm like 90% of the way to that goal. It was reasonably unreasonable. This book, so The Psychology of Selling, really started opening up my mind to like this kind of like this lifestyle and this book. It really, I'd say this was almost like a paradigm shift when I started reading books on sales. Because before that, I had a very, very quite negative view of sales and making money. And reading these books and just reading authors just say like, yeah, like you've got to not be afraid of sales. You've got to not think that it's a bad thing. You've got to not think that it's immoral or that, you know, you're doing anyone a disservice. You've got to think that you're actually providing value. There's a customer with a need and you're trying to help them fulfill that need. And if it's your product, then it's a win-win for both of you. And there was another book that's coming up, but there was like, there's another book I will discuss soon, but it almost like made my jaw drop of like how in depth it was. It's like, okay, when the customer has this kind of objection, you should use this kind of solution, and this kind of attitude from the customer, you should use this. It's kind of like, this is a skill that motherfuckers have been leveling up, and the fact that they've just put these like learning lessons in books just blows my mind. Okay, the next book we have is called Cashvertising by Drew Eric Whitman. That one right there. Wait, this one. Cashvertising. So this is a book on copywriting. So copywriting is kind of like sales, but through text. So sales is quite broad, and obviously it's just, sales can be broken down into many, many different aspects of sales. Copywriting is when you're trying to sell through like text on like computer page. It's kind of like obvious in a sense, but it's like, for example, when you go onto my course page, or you go onto some random like website which sells you some bullshit, the text there would be called copywriting. That's like sales text. Sales in person is somewhat similar. It still follows the same principles. It's still like, you know, asking questions and everything, but of course it's a very different dynamic when it's on text. And this is actually a very, very important skill to learn, because how many person-to-person sales is actually going on for most people when you really think about it. Like, I don't really do sales in a call in a person. I wouldn't really ever do. Of course, like, you know, there is the good point that we're always selling and everything, but in general, if you're thinking about specifically selling, okay, products for money, I did a couple of like somewhat sales stuff when I would take calls for my coaching, and, you know, I'd try and like, you know, use some sales tactics, but honestly, it's not so important to know those like great sales skills, because the best coaching clients I had, you know, I would do like free calls or anything, or I'd do like a very like affordable first call, and you maybe want to book onto the package. The clients that I got, they really liked the first call, and they were like, yeah, let's do it. I didn't have to actually sell them stuff. The people that I had to use like the sales tactics on always ended up just being less motivated for the coaching anyway. And of course, this is because coaching is like a service you have to commit to, so of course like that, it's more detrimental for it. But in general, you're not really going to use the actual sales skill to sell products if you're doing a business similar to mine. You're not going to be the one who's taking the sales calls. If I did make a new premium product that required, you know, an actual phone sale, I wouldn't be the one doing it. I would go employ someone for like $10, $20, $30 an hour or something, and they would be the ones selling. Like, you know, they'd answer like the Zoom call when someone wanted to buy my stuff. Copywriting is how we sell in the modern day. So if you're about to do a business similar to mine, if you want to be a YouTuber, you will eventually end up selling something on like a new page, and the page that you'll use will go into these books. But essentially what you'll do is you'll make a landing page, like a sales page. So it's not like a normal website, because normal websites, there's too much fucking clutter. You may have seen my aesthetic body course like linked in my main channel. And it almost looks like somewhat of like a scam website if you didn't really know what it was. But like a normal website has like, you know, loads of buttons, got the home page, the help button and everything. When you're just trying to sell, you want literally nothing. So you make a landing page, a sales page, which is literally just almost like a white page with just text down the middle and a video and everything. It's step by step and everything like that we go through. And a book like this teaches you the basics of copywriting. So it's very similar to the sales skill, but it's a lot more based on the modern sort of selling on websites. So for example, he'll tell you what type of headline to have. The headline should be 5 words or less, and it should have this font, and it should be this big, and you should have like underneath the headline you should have a subheading, you know, like all this kind of quite like specific stuff that you should know. Now, I read this book and it was pretty helpful, and I definitely like got my first sales from it. But there is a book, 3 books that we will go on to discuss as we get to them on my Kindle, that kind of just made this book negligible, and we'll go on to them soon. So the next one, I've got an Audible one here. I'm surprised that that's on, because it's not like an actual book, but it's like an audiobook for Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. So this is like a standard, very popular book right now. Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. This is like the type of book that is just, it's a very, very, very high quality, quite like popular standard book on building discipline. And the value of it comes not from specific discipline tactics, but just from hearing the story of someone who went through a lot, and then he's giving you his like sort of mental models, his mindset, his mentalities on how he can push faster, harder, whatever, continue just going even when it hurts. Now, I developed my discipline, especially the phrase that I use, do the hard work, especially when you don't feel like it. That's the explanation of discipline, is that phrase. I developed all that before I actually read this book, but I feel like I would have gotten to this point of my discipline way faster if I read this book earlier. And in fact, I haven't read this book. I've listened to it, and if I was you, like, I wouldn't, like, I can't really say because I haven't read it, but I would assume the book is nowhere near as good as the actual audiobook. So you can get the audiobook on Audible, and for me personally, like, the best thing to do, is quite common sense. I'm surprised people haven't done this, but literally put your earphones in, listen to the audiobook instead of reading it, and do it whilst you're doing some activity that requires discipline. So I would listen to it when I would run to the gymnastic ring spot. So, you know, there's a sense of discipline. I'm like literally running with like a heavy backpack and everything. Some people just prefer to read it, but in my opinion, a book like this isn't meant to be just read when you're in like the comfort of your home. It kind of destroys the purpose. So I would listen to it when I was like going on runs and I was like cycling to kickboxing and all this. We have a book here, Deep Work by Cal Newport, right there next to my thumb. Deep Work by Cal Newport. Now, I've mentioned this book loads of times, so I won't explain it too much. Pretty much the idea is that most of us are doing very shallow work. Not only the tasks that we're choosing to spend our time on, but also the way that we work. The TLDR of this is that deep work will be the best work that you produce, and it has such a huge benefit not only to your level of like, you know, your career or your business advancement, but also to your like philosophical, like your spiritual, your emotional fulfillment. Because when you produce some awesome work, you feel fucking sick. But most of us don't produce that awesome work because we're constantly just dabbling in like shallow work. Shallow work is bullshit that like just isn't really that important. It doesn't require all of your mental cognition. So for example, shallow work is like answering emails. It's like me being on Discord and I'm moderating Discord or doing something that don't really have to do. Deep work is like this. No one else can do this for me. No one else can record these videos exactly like me. No one can be Hamza on the camera. That's deep work. The idea of this book, Deep Work by Cal Newport, is to essentially just completely stay hyper-focused on the task that you're doing. So no bullshit distractions, no checking your phone in between or anything. And to prioritize and almost only do those deep work, those high caliber activities, and the shallow work that you do have, outsource it, eliminate it. It's very, very similar to the concept in the 4-Hour Work Week. And this book and the 4-Hour Work Week always get quite hated on. They get people being critical of it because everyone's like, oh, but I can't work only 4 hours. But like, okay, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it works for a lot of people. It worked for me. And if you want to reject yourself from the principles of this because you need to work 10-hour days and stuff, all right, fine, fair enough, but that's your loss. Let's see, where are we? I've got Atomic Habits by James Clear here as an Audible. I'm not going to lie, this is a very, very, very highly rated book. It's like the book that everyone raves about with self-improvement. It's like the cornerstone. I'm not going to lie, like I never really liked it. I never really like got much from it. And I think the reason why was because I've never really struggled with implementing a new habit. Because for me personally, it's like when I was on self-improvement, when I discovered this book, I realized like, not to put this guy down, but it's like his strategy of implementing new habits is completely and utterly subpar to mine, which mine was the timetable. Mine was, okay, follow the same sort of military style discipline every single day. You write down a timetable. I'm going to wake up at 7 a.m. I'm going to do this at 7:30, this at 7:50, whatever, and do the same things almost every single day as best as you can. That's better than every other productivity / habit tactic that I've ever come across, because this is all about, okay, implementing a new habit or destroying like a previous habit. My idea with the timetable was that my entire day became a habit. It was just way, way stronger. So personally, I didn't really get too much from Atomic Habits. But if you're not going to live like that lifestyle like I did, where you're doing the same things at the same time every day, then yeah, a lot of people do rave about this book. I have The Unplugged Alpha by Richard Cooper. It's an audiobook, so I didn't read this one, but it's an audiobook. This is like, it's kind of like a nice sort of summary of the red pill. You don't really need to know like too much or anything. It's just like The Unplugged Alpha by Richard Cooper. It's just kind of like a somewhat summary of the red pill. It's certain dynamics, like there's no one that you shouldn't date like single mothers who are older than you or anything, that you should be like to be honest, like there was nothing new in it. So he'd mentioned some good like green flags, some red flags. There was nothing new. If you've read the red pill, you don't need to read this book. But if you're like don't really know what the red pill is, maybe you'd want to read it. It's like a very, very easy read, and it's by a guy who is fairly successful as well, which is quite nice. So here we have the first book of the trilogy that I just mentioned before. There, it's called .com Secrets by Russell Brunson. So this is this is probably the best book that we've come across so far. .com Secrets by Russell Brunson. This is the book that made the copywriting book Cashvertising negligible. This book is part of a 3 series. So there's .com Secrets, Traffic Secrets, and Expert Secrets. If you're going to do a social media business like I am here, this is a 10 out of 10, 100% recommendation. Like, it's not even a recommendation. Like, you have to read this book to get a good level of success. I promise you, the 3 books are fucking insane. He has completely just laid out exactly everything that you need to know to grow a social media sort of business and everything, and also to then sell a premium product alongside it. So before this, I was just kind of making my YouTube videos and just kind of doing what I thought was, the best case scenario, which was I was recording my YouTube videos. At the end of the video, I was saying, if you want to get one-to-one coaching by me, or if you want to buy my products, then you can go to the link in the description, and you go to the link in the description, and then there's like a shitty like Shopify page where I'm selling my stuff. And I was, I made like £1,000 a month, 1,500, 1,700. And so it's not, it's a full-time income. It wasn't bad. I followed the tips on this and immediately times that by 3, 4, 5. So I went from 1,500 to 4,300 to 13,200 per month, right? And there's just so many different things in this. It's fucking insane. Like, this is a guy who was probably spent like 100 million on like advertising, split testing, and everything. Like, this stuff blows my mind. It might take me a while to explain. Imagine the smallest change on a sales page can lead to the sale or not. Like, doesn't that blow your mind? Imagine, okay, there's a sales page for my course. A certain like word, a font, a size, the actual font, like, the type of text that you have, that can completely change whether or not someone actually buys. And so sales online, like online income and like, digital selling, is all just about increasing your conversion rate. So your conversion rate is just what percentage of people who land on your sales page actually check out. So a good conversion rate is like 5%, something like that, right? This is probably the guy who's tested it out more than everyone else, who's like fully come up with literally the exact format of your sales page. He made a software that he essentially promotes through these books called ClickFunnels. I don't use it because I had already like set up using Kajabi, which is like a different platform. If I was going to start again, if for example I lost everything, if I was going to make a new business, or even if I was going to make a new product, I'm going to use ClickFunnels 100%. It's like the best thing that you can use right now. But ClickFunnels, it's kind of like a separate thing. It's kind of like the software that you use to actually host your website, your sales page, to sell things, and it gives you the best settings out of every like website online. It gives you like the best settings to like split test things. But in .com Secrets, Traffic Secrets, and Expert Secrets, he fully goes into detail of exactly what you should do to grow your YouTube channel and your TikTok and your emails and everything. The gist is that you start off with this is like marketing 101, right? So you start off thinking about the customer and who you could help, who could be your avatar. So when I read this book, for me, like, I really spent some time on it, and it was younger Hamza, and it was a certain like period of younger Hamza's life which I knew that I could help him the most, and I knew that he really like, there's lots of people just like him. Then the idea is that you start to think, okay, in which area can you help them the most? Health, wealth, or relationships? You start dialing down your message. He teaches you like literally the formula to use for YouTube and everything. And of course, like, my formula in terms of YouTube scripts is better than his, but like his one is a very, very like high quality one. If you just suddenly read it and started a YouTube channel, you'd be miles ahead of like 90% of people anyway. Traffic Secrets is all about increasing your traffic, increasing your audience, and then Expert Secrets is like this idea that you've already got the fundamentals set up. Expert Secrets like makes you more of an expert in your field, so you really begin to like give the best advice. Incredible 3 books, literally so high quality 3 books that it blows my mind that people who are into like social media businesses haven't read them yet. The next book we have here is Models by Mark Manson. So Mark Manson is the guy who wrote this book. There's a lot not giving a fuck, but he wrote this one first. Models by Mark Manson. Attract women through honesty. So it's a fairly good book, and I listened to it. I didn't read it, but I listened to it, and when I was going through, I'm not going to lie, I realized like he's just fantastic at marketing. Essentially, the book got famous because he said the most important things to attract a woman is honesty and authenticity and vulnerability. Those are three things that you'd imagine like that's not true, especially if you're into red pill. You'd be like, wait, honesty, authenticity, vulnerability. Nah, that can't be true. Essentially, he's played a very, very clever game here where he's disguised the word vulnerability and honesty and authenticity as just confidence. It took me a while to realize, but once the veils pull back, you realize the book's not really that special. He says, oh yeah, you should have the vulnerability. Like, the most important thing is to have the vulnerability to go up and like kind of like express to a woman that you really like her, right? But that's just confidence. And of course, if the book was all about attract women through confidence, it wouldn't have done anywhere near as well. But because it's like attract women through vulnerability, it's kind of like an interesting topic, and it's got so many guys talking. Either way, it's a very solid book, and it's one of those where like it has a very, very, very healthy approach to it, which the red pill generally doesn't. So when I was listening to the book, and I used to think like, you know what? If I listened to this book years ago, things would have been very, very different. This book, along with a couple of like fundamental red pill posts and like, you know, understanding, would have like been all that I needed to really know. You can definitely go like too far into the red pill, which is what I mentioned recently, and it can be a beautiful thing. It can be like a very like eye-opening thing when you do take the red pill. But the issue is that the red pill is very, very diluted by the people online. Like, you know, the red pill, like the fundamental is just like the fundamental beliefs that the rational male, you learn from the rational male. But it's a pretty good book. Models attract women through honesty. What else do we have? The next one I have is Attached by Dr. Amir Levine. Attached. So this is a book on attachment styles. I've mentioned this book a bunch of times, so I won't go too much into it. Your attachment styles is kind of like your dating personality. And we all have like a certain dating personality that's pretty much formed by the experiences that we had as children. Now, some people think that this is like too reductionist, and they think like, wait, no, like, you know, just because your parents treated you in this way doesn't mean that you'll turn out this way. I completely disagree with those people. And the simple fact is like 90% of people don't do any significant self-improvement to actually change like whatever they were determined to be like due to their parents, like their upbringing. So chances are, you included, because you've probably been on self-improvement for like a year or two compared to, you know, 15, 17, 20, 22 years of life that you've had just passively going through life. Chances are you are extremely, extremely influenced by your childhood upbringing right now, but you don't even realize it. And of course, not only is that just all parts of life, but of course it's going to be in dating too. And so the things that you observed in your parents and how your parents loved you and how they loved each other is going to really, really make up your understanding of dating right now. And this isn't to say that you'll end up exactly like them, but generally a lot of people end up very, very, very similar, like scarily similar to their parents, even though they're so consciously sure, they are 100% sure they're not. I won't go into too much detail, but there's three main attachment styles. There's secure, avoidant, and anxious. I'm naturally the anxious style, and essentially the purpose of this book and the purpose of like your dating life, if you are avoidant or anxious, is just emulate the secure type till eventually you can embody the secure attachment. The secure attachment is kind of like healthy people who saw like healthy, loving relationship between their parents, which honestly is actually quite rare. Most people have experienced quite an avoidant parent, so like, you know, the dad who's always like working and he never shows love, or the anxious where you got like abused by your parents, or your parents abused each other, or they just kind of like were very like, your parents' mental health was fucked, so they were shouting at all the time. So your sense of love is very fragile, and because of that, you act in like a very scarce way where you want to hold on to every love, every bit of affection that you can do. And of course, this is gonna like really fuck up your dating life and your sexual life as you get older, because there's people who aren't good for you, but you kind of fall for them just because of the fact that there's a shred of affection there, which is my life story. Let's see, what else do we have? I have here The Male Advantage by Chris Sturmy. Chris, and I've got the paperback. That's my boy. So this is Chris's book from the YouTube channel First Man, and it's a book, The Male Advantage. It's essentially a book based on most of the topics that he talks about on his channel. The book is very small. You can literally read it in one sitting. It took me like two and a half hours to read it all. If you've watched a bunch of his videos. So you might have like watched his videos, but if you've been like me, like I've went down his channel, I've watched like a lot of his videos, probably like 60 to 70%, and he's got hundreds of videos. There's nothing like that new in the book, so it's like you can choose which one. But for me personally, like I like, if there's a certain topic like that I'm really interested in, I like revolving myself around it. So reading the book still made some things click, even though there was nothing exactly new in the book that he hasn't mentioned on his YouTube channel. But he's went like, it's in very good detail in a bunch of these. So I lent this book to my friend, and he's the one who's like added all this stuff. But there was a certain bit that I messaged Chris about as well. Where was it now? It's really good. I'm not gonna lie. Like when I'm flicking through it right now, it's like there's a bunch of just nice learning lessons that you can constantly just come back to. So if I open a random page, like here. He talks about the Darwinian male concept. So he's mentioned this on his YouTube videos all the time. But he's kind of going into detail by saying, like, you know, what was once expected, what was once praised is now expected. And things have gotten harder for men, especially in the dating market. So we have to be doing more things. It's a very, very good book. It's a very like digestible book. The ebook as well I read when I was in Portugal. The next one I have is Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. This one is the audiobook. I've got the actual book as well. I've mentioned this book recently a couple of times, and I made a video about it, so I won't mention it too much. The book is all about self-image and the fact that whatever we play in our mind heavily influences our self-image. I won't go too much because I've explained it a lot, but the general gist in terms of just practicality of what exactly you should do is just constantly make sure you're improving your self-image in your mind. The way you see yourself is incredibly important. And he goes through a bunch of things, but the two things I like the most is visualizations and success memories. Visualizations. Visualize a realistic, reasonably unreasonable end goal of the thing that you want. So for example, if there's a cute girl there, every guy who wants to go speak to her, the majority of guys will say like, oh, I don't want to speak to her, because they're just fucking virgins and they don't know like they can go up speak to a girl. But like of the guys who would go and approach her, before they go to speak to her, they're thinking about what to say. The issue is that whatever you think in your mind, your body and your personality conveys. And so you go up to her as the guy who's kind of, a bit hesitant. You go up to her as the guy who's overthinking about what to say to her, which isn't like that attractive. Whereas if you just, instead of thinking what to say, but if you just focus on the mental picture of her, the end point that you want. So the end point in this like reasonably unrealistic scenario is maybe you guys going on a spontaneous date, or at the very least, she's like handing you your phone with her number with like a sexy smile on her face. You just focus on that. Because now when you go up to it, even though you haven't prepared a fucking script, not only like not preparing the script is going to make you better because you're not talking like a robot, but two, you're going to go up as the personality of the guy who's already gotten her number. So it's a very, very like different atmosphere, like different personality as you go up. And success reminders are just nice and simple. Just constantly just remind yourself of the successes that you've had, because you'll just keep yourself in like feeling like a winner, and you just get so much easier into a flow. This is the kind of shit that Ryan Holiday would probably disagree with, like, the Stoics amongst us and the philosophers would disagree with, and they'd say, no, there's value in being negative, and there's value in like not feeling like a success. And they're absolutely right in terms of growth. But day to day, I'm not gonna lie, forget all that. Day to day, bro, I want to feel good. Day to day, I want to like feel like I want to remind myself of the good things that I've done, so that I feel good and I'll get more into a social flow. But if, for example, I remind myself, oh yeah, like you approached like 10 girls last week, then I'm more likely to go and approach this 11th one, instead of thinking like, oh wait, let me be humble, the ego's there anyway. Like, fuck all that, bro. Sorry, Brian Holiday. The next one I have over there is a audiobook, Hard Times Create Strong Men by Stefan Arnio. So it's an audiobook. This is a long ass audiobook. I listened to it over months. It's 26 hours long. I believe the book's like hundreds and hundreds of pages. This is a fantastic book, and it's literally, it covers so many different areas of life. It literally is just, it kind of answers the question of like, what does it mean to be a man? What is masculinity? How do you become like a man? What's wrong with today's society? It gives you lessons from history, lessons from like philosophy, and it predicts some very scary things. So in the next video of the Hamza Unfiltered channel, I'm going to be speaking about this book. It's taken me a while to kind of like distill it down into my mind and actually like really think about it, but it's quite some scary shit because there's a certain pattern that happens in nations in history, which is that good times create weak men, and that's the time that we're in right now. You can see that weak men are being created, but this time is almost over. Weak men create hard times. I think that's going to start we're going through some hard times eventually, like soon, and I think maybe this year, maybe within 2-3 years, we'll officially feel like we're in the hard times where resources will be scarce. There'll be like a lot more turmoil in like inner cities and everything. So what is it? It's good times create weak men create hard times create strong men create good times. This book, honestly, it kind of like it gave me like a paradigm shift, because I realized like perhaps one of the most important things that we can be doing right now as young men is to become strong, because good men create hard times create strong men, which is probably going to be soon. And so right now we're in the good times. Like every need that you have is like ticked off in a sense, but we are branching to the hard times, right? You can have this call to action right now and you can become one of these strong men, because strong men create good times, and you're gonna have a good fucking time if you're one of those strong men. If you're like the warrior in times of uncertainty, if you're the scientist in times of pandemics and shit, you're gonna be the one who reaps the fucking rewards of that. It's time to be like ready for this shit. Like this book fully just, it makes you really look at like our lives in these like, privileged countries and everything with a second lens. And of course there's probably someone watching this who doesn't live in a first world country, but at least for me, like I've only ever lived in like the UK really. Like I was born in Pakistan. We moved here when I was quite young, so I only know like a first world Western white nation which is very, very safe and like friendly, and of course like we went through racism and shit, but like it's very, very safe. There's no wars or any bullshit like that, and I think things are going to change quite dramatically. I think we are headed into like the hard times, and so why not just get like a run up? Why not just start running right now, getting used to becoming a strong man before you actually need to be. The next book here is Traffic Secrets. So we just mentioned that with .com Secrets. That's the trilogy. I have here The Rational Male. This is the religion one. I've not read this one, but we'll go through The Rational Male in general. So The Rational Male is in fact, the Rational Male, I actually read it when I first came back here. So May 2020, I read it about that time, and I actually got the book. So I was like red pilled for like years, but I never bothered to even read the Rational Male. I just kind of thought the red pill was the subreddit. And the book is hard to read, I'm not going to lie. The author, Rollo Tomasi, has like a very, very like, he writes like a bit of a dick, I'm not going to lie. Like not even like offensively or anything. It's just like he uses like just fucking huge words and like quite hard to understand grammar. He's probably like a very intelligent guy or something, but it's like a very hard to read book, and it's one of those where like even though I've recommended it to bare people and they've like tried to read it, pretty much everyone puts the book back down because it is like, it's just incredibly hard to read his writing style, and you can kind of get like a distillation of his book on the subreddit and everything. But if you commit to reading The Rational Male, the first book, and I've read the second one and the third one, the value you get is immense. Again, it's one of those concepts where you might already understand the topic, but when you revolve your life around it, when you're reading a book for a couple of hours a day, like you take it seriously. So I was reading this book when I first moved back, and it was just hitting me of like how truthful this was. It was kind of like I just got red pilled again, like properly. So all the previous times where I thought I was red pilled from age 17 or 18, it was more in like a pickup artist sense, where I just kind of learned how to get girls, and I learned some basic shit like alpha fucks, beta bucks, one-anitis and everything. But it was from these books that I actually started to like learn like, this shit goes deep. This isn't just about picking up women. This is like literally discussing of how societies ran and like history of like male and female dynamics. This shit's important. The next one I have here is Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week. So Tim Ferriss was the one who made this one. This is The 4-Hour Work Week. This book is The 4-Hour Body. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really like this one. I really, really like Tim Ferriss's work, and I feel like I might be one of those haters who like hates on this book and says like it's unrealistic. But for this one, The 4-Hour Body, I haven't really like it. It's a bunch of like somewhat fast-paced advice, and the idea is like the thing is the uncommon guide to rapid fat loss, incredible sex, and becoming superhuman. So it sounds good. It's very clickbaity, and in the back it says like, oh, like 15-minute orgasms and all this, and it doesn't, for me personally, it didn't like deliver the value that it stated. Like a lot, when you get to the advice, it's one of those where you're like, nah, that's just, it's either not going to work or it's just one of those things like you're not going to be able to do it. So one of the random things is like, for example, he said the best way to like make gains is literally to do like 7 reps of 2 exercises and then go home and then not train for like 3 days. This that type of like new age bullshit where it's like, oh, he made this workout routine that like got him 30 pounds of muscle in a month. Okay, shut up, bro. Come on. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those where it's like, if you're actually into fitness and shit, you know that that's just complete fucking bullshit. There's other things which is like, a lot of it's been disproven by like research, but there's other things which he says like where he's doubled his testosterone by eating like almonds and Brazil nuts, and whilst that does give you somewhat of a boost, it's like, this is why, to be honest, I don't fuck with like research. I don't fuck, people always ask me like, oh, cite the research. That's why I don't fuck with, because this guy, I know for a fact that he's done this in like a research where he's like fully the most popular human guinea pig in the world right now. He's like, he's like the multi-millionaire guy who went through thousands of tests for all this, got his bloods taken, his like all this, like the scientific shit, right? But it's just so simple to I'm not saying he manipulated the research, but it's so simple to just have research that proves you right or proves you wrong. So for example, for the testosterone, like the main thing he did was like the Brazil nuts and the almonds and some random bullshit, right? And the thing is, if we take a normal healthy person, give them some Brazil nuts and almonds, the testosterone's probably not going to go up significantly, maybe like very, very insignificantly, right? But of course, his research proves that it went up by double. Now, this makes you think, okay, but like, maybe he was just at dangerously low fat when he originally took his test, and that's like, there we go. This is why I don't fuck with like scientific research, because it's like, it's so easy to just get research that proves you right, proves you wrong. That he might have just been eating a very, very low amount of dietary fats, and then he ate it, so now he's at a healthy level. So it's not so much that, Brazil nuts double your testosterone, it's just more that his testosterone went down because for a little while, consciously or subconsciously, he just was at like a very low dietary fat macronutrients. So I didn't personally like this book, to be honest. What else? I've read 20% of this book called The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. This book's like really, really famous. This guy's really famous, Robin Sharma. He's like a big guy for like CEOs and rich people. Trash book. One of the worst ones I actually read. 29%. Like I got pissed off at it, I'm not gonna lie. I heard so many good things about this book. It's this, proper motivates you to wake up at 5 a.m. and like you follow this morning routine and everything. And the way that it's written is just fucking horrendous. I just got pissed off at it. Like, instead of just telling you like, like 5 a.m. and everything, it, like he walks you through like this fucking fake conversation, and it's like just shit writing as well. The homeless man moved at the speed of an ancient turtle, and then he turned his head. Like, shut the fuck up, bro. Fuck you. This was, and I like this one. The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. So Grant Cardone gets like quite a lot of flack, as like a lot of like business gurus and success gurus do. They get flack by broke people. I'm not gonna lie. Like it seems to me like the people who hate like these people, and they'll be like, oh my god, they sell expensive courses. They do expensive motivation. Shut the fuck up, bro. He literally is worth almost 100 million. So just shut the fuck up. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I dislike the people who dislike that idea of like, oh, online gurus. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, I don't know. Maybe because I'm like, potentially, I don't know, I wouldn't really class myself as a guru, but I feel like I could be like classified as one by like someone who doesn't like me, and they're like, oh look, here's another self-improvement guru who's charging for courses and stuff. But at least this book, it helped me. He gets a lot of flack, and so I was quite hesitant to read this book. But I also kind of knew that the people who kind of criticize people like this, like ultra wealthy people who give in like motivational, like like this Tony Robbins and all this, I've always known the people who criticize them are just pussies, because it's just that thing of like, oh, there's a guy who's worth 100 million, like he must be scamming people. Just shut the fuck up. The 10X Rule it's kind of like a basic success book. So it's just really nice to hear like the learning lessons from someone who's very successful, very wealthy, who's got multiple companies, who's also got like a loving family home and everything. And you just kind of get like a bunch of his wisdom. There's not so much that I can be like, I can particularly say to you, but what the general idea he says is pick your goal, which is like very, very reasonable, times it by 10, and then also times by 10 the amount of effort that you're willing to put in, and that's the best case scenario. So he says like people just sell themselves too short, they choose goals that are too weak, and then of course they're not motivated to do that. He says pick a goal, make the goal 10 times bigger, so that's hugely motivational, but then also make your output, or your input, 10 times bigger as well, which it's like a nice idea. I disagreed with the idea of like, 10 times your effort, because I don't believe that effort equals output. I don't believe that 10 times effort equals 10 times output. I think it's like 10 times effort equals 1.5 times output, in my opinion, if you if you've got the right type of business like I've been doing. We have here How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole LePera. I've mentioned that book a lot. It's a very it's a good introduction to trauma and like childhood wounds, and there's just a bunch of like advice in it and like stories on shit like abuse you may have experienced as a child, and then how to heal from that. So some of the random ones that I can remember right now is reparenting. So that's like the book's literally all about like the work that you can do to heal from your trauma. So like one of the things she says is reparenting. We start to kind of feel like you're now reparenting your inner child. So we all have like an inner child inside of us that still like hurts from the wounds that he may have went through from childhood if you've got like abused by your parents. And the idea is that you parent that inner child the way that it should have. You give it the love, the unconditional love, and like the attention that it needs. It explains a bunch of concepts like dissociation, flashbacks, and everything. So it's a very good introduction into trauma. So I think it's the first book that I read about trauma, and I'm glad that I really did that. We've got The Charisma Myth by Olivia Fox Cabane. The Charisma Myth. Very, very good standard kind of social skills book. A bit more advanced. This book actually goes into things like presence and mindfulness, which is very nice because that's incredibly important in social skills. The idea is charisma is like the skill that you like the best skill in social skills. It's like this magnetic personality where you're confident, but you're also warm, but you're also powerful. So imagine that it's someone in a powerful position who you look up to, but who's like warm and loving to you. That's like charisma, but he's also like to everyone, right? Everyone seems to love him. He seems to love everyone. That's a charismatic person. He walks in and everyone's talking to him, right? You want to be like that type of guy. And this book breaks down the ways to like become more charismatic, but also in detail of like the different types of charisma and everything. It's quite an advanced look at the skill of charisma. The things that I can remember from it is that there's three pillars of, not three pillars, but there's like three things that influence your level of charisma, and that is presence, power, power, and warmth. Presence is like mindfulness, because you can't be charismatic if you're constantly distracted. You can't be charismatic if, for example, we're having a conversation and I like start daydreaming. That's very anti-charismatic. Power, you need to have like a level of like power and status in the situation to be seen as charismatic, because if you don't have that, if you've got presence and warmth, you're kind of like a nice person, but you're not like important, so we don't really value your presence and warmth unless if you've got power. And so this is the interesting one. Most people who have power don't have either of these. Maybe they have power, maybe they have power and presence, but they usually don't have warmth. And so that's like, the kind of like the cold leader. And we still like the cold leader, but the guy who also has warmth alongside that's like the best case scenario. The warmth is kind of like they treat you nicely. So you can like implement this into your life. You can start meditating and do exercises that bring you back to the present moments when you're in a conversation. Take it seriously. Think about the sensation of being sat, look into the person's eyes. Power is the things you kind of do outside of the situation. So you want to bring up your social status in the environment that you're in, as well as just sort of convey that social status by things like your body language, your dress sense. And then warmth is just kind of like being nice to people. Very, very good. If you can improve all three, you really, really start getting like liked by people. We have The Body Keeps the Score by, where is it? The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. So I listened to it on audiobook, and I bought this book as well. This is a very, very in-depth view at trauma and PTSD. So this book, I'm not gonna lie, it is a pretty good book, but one of the things I didn't realize is that this book is way, way more about just normal PTSD, which is like a one-time event. So if you've been assaulted, if you've been in a car crash or something like that, if you've been in like a traumatic event that has stopped and it was one time, then this book, like, the book's really good anyway, and it's really, really interesting. It gives you like very, very interesting stories about like people in Vietnam and everything, but it pretty much entirely focuses on just PTSD, which for me personally isn't exactly what I have. So if you've been like abused by your parents, or you had like repetitive assaults and everything, you will most likely have complex PTSD, where essentially, imagine it's PTSD, but you're getting that traumatic event every few days when you're getting like beat by your parents or you're getting like screamed at or something. So this book, I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of like, what's that word? Anticlimactic for me, where I was getting to the end and I realized like a lot of the things he suggested was like, yeah, it's pretty good and everything, but it wasn't really aimed towards me. I still really enjoyed the book. It really captivated my attention, and I still took quite a few learning lessons from it, and it gave me the advice of starting yoga, which I've done. And it has actually got some very good advice, because the things that really helped me in my own sort of trauma healing is what he's mentioned. So he's mentioned martial arts, weightlifting, meditating, journaling as well. We have The Way of the Superior Man by David Dida. Oh, right there. This is a very, very good book. It's very interesting, and it's very, it's kind of hard to read in a sense, but not with like words, but it's one of those where it's like you're supposed to you'll read like a chapter or a paragraph, and you sit there and you contemplate it, and it's this idea of like becoming like a superior man, and it's a very interesting thing. So one of the first key points he says is like breathe properly, breathe into your stomach, expand your stomach, take up some room and you breathe and everything. But it goes on to like even explain semen retention before it was even popular online, and it says like you should like, a weak man ejaculates essentially, even when he's having sex. He's like he gives you teachings on how to stay on semen retention, especially when you're having sex, and it's like, actually, when you follow that advice, I'm not gonna lie, it's fucking incredible. So I don't think I need to say anything more about this book, The Way of the Superior Man. It's also got a bunch of there's chapters on loving women, there's chapters on like philosophy, on making money, on work and the soul and everything. So it's literally just like, how do you become like an advanced man, not so much like, the 1% type of man that like me and Chris from First Man talk about, where we talk about money and stuff. This is more about like that level of like masculine enlightenment. We're almost at the end now. So this book was supposed to be near the start, but it's The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz, right there in the middle. So this is a very good book. It was the book I read after How to Win Friends and Influence People. It was one of the first books I got on my Kindle, and it was recommended in the end of this book by the 4-Hour Work Week. So Tim Ferriss mentions this, The Magic of Thinking Big, at the end, and it really is, the title of the book is just kind of think bigger. Stop setting these small goals, stop living this small life, and start like thinking bigger, start like setting some big ass fucking goals. Because I am so grateful that I read this shit, Still to this day, people talk to me about like my goals, and they kind of like my friends, and they kind of like say it in like a funny way, like, oh, but you've read The Magic of Thinking Big, so I bet you're already planning to hit like 1 million subscribers or something. I'm telling you right now, we are where we are on the channel because of this book and because of this idea. I am where I am in my physique because of this concept. Of course, I only read this book like 1.5 years ago, and I started my physique years ago, but I've always been like a fairly big thinker. One of the things recently, like, I forgot what it was, but it's like, as soon as I start something new, like for example kickboxing, I think big straight away, and I'm thinking like, yeah, like I could probably like go into the UFC or something like that. Like, you should have that mindset. That's reasonably unreasonable. Now, of course, I'm not saying I'm going to go to the UFC and win right now. But the idea is, like, yeah, like, if I wanted to, I could do. Of course, I'd train almost every day, and I'd train for, like, years first. But you've got to think that it's possible. Hang on, my camera's going to die again. Okay, that is the second battery that we've rinsed through for this video. So, the next book here is Complex PTSD, From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. Next to my thumb right there. So this is a book that I've recently been speaking about on my channel, like over the last month or so, and this is like the book that I actually this is the book that I really needed to read, because it's all about complex PTSD, and this, like, that's the shit that I have. So if you're somewhat like me and you got beat by your parents and you got like fucking abused for years through your childhood, then this is the type of like knowledge that you need. I found that a lot of books on like mental health don't actually talk about childhood abuse at all, when in fact I think that child abuse is probably the most common. Yeah, I think child abuse is the biggest reason for adult mental health problems, but it's just one of those like undiscussed things that, like, you know, people are so certain that they're not like holding trauma from their childhood when they actually are. I can't give too much advice because I'm not done reading it just yet. I'm about halfway through, but there's a bunch of like very like small snippets of advice. So one of the random ones that I've mentioned previously on a video on this Hamza Unfiltered channel is the value of like angering, of venting, of like, you know, reclaiming your aggression that was stomped out of you, that was like beaten out of you as a child. So if you've had a similar dynamic to me where like you got hurt, you know, you got beat by your parents or something, by something, but then if you got angry about that, if you kind of voiced your, you know, aggression, your resentment for it, you got beat again, it's kind of like your ability to be angry has been so stomped out that you would actually get value in being angry at how you were raised. It's very interesting topics, and I'm not going to lie, like I started reading it a while ago and then moved on to some other books. I feel like I've got to reread it and really kind of grasp it, because it's quite a huge topic to be thinking about. Every single time I read it, it was just quite mentally draining. I feel like I grew a fair amount, but I also feel like I somewhat resented like trying to process a lot of this stuff at once, because I was doing therapy and everything at the time as well. So this is a book that I've just recently read, sorry. And I pretty much read, usually I read 10 different books at once. So I've got 10 different books open, and whatever I feel curious for, I'll read. This book, I opened it and literally like read it start to finish. It was one of those books for me. And the book title is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Essentialism. Fantastic book. This book like is what I needed at the time. This was literally just 2 weeks ago or so. And the basic idea, we do way too much in this modern day. We're so focused on so many different things, and that diversifies us, which feels like a good thing, but it also just spreads you out too thin. So it's like this certain image where like you can go 1 centimeter, like one little bit in like 10 different directions, and essentially you're a complete noob, or you know, you're not anything special in any of these. Or you can go one big line in one direction, one topic. So the idea is, instead of trying to do 10 different things, some motherfuckers online, like I literally see them boast about the fact that they've got like 7 companies or some bullshit. Shut the fuck up, bro. How about you make one company successful? Dumbass. But that's like the reason why I was able to build this body, is because I did nothing else first. I started 2014, I believe, and the only productive thing I was doing was just building this body alongside, like, you know, trying to learn how to speak to girls and stuff. That was it. If I tried to do all of this at once, if I tried to build this body, the mental health, the business and everything, I wouldn't have done any of them. I would have been so subpar in all of them. Too many guys are doing way too much. And in terms of tasks as well, this has really changed up a lot for me recently. I realized, like, he drills in this thing of you. The author says, like, you have a highest point of contribution in a certain task. Do that and do nothing else. For me, it's obvious, right? It's the videos. But I was doing I was spending more than like half an hour to an hour on Discord, on my Discord server. I fucking moderating it. I've got like so many moderators who are like happy to do the role, and I was moderating it myself, and I was like going through every single chat and making sure that no one's chatting shit about me and shit. And the same with like the podcast that I've, like every podcast that I've done in a while, apart from like the one with Chris, because that felt like I was speaking to a friend and we were just fucking around. But every one that I've had people come onto my podcast, I've resented it. Like I couldn't be bothered, because I just realized like that's not what's important right now. Eventually I will get into podcasting like kind of like full time, and it'd be awesome to do that. But right now it's not something I'm interested in, so I cut it out. So all you motherfuckers who've been telling me, Hamza, get on TikTok, shut the fuck up, get on TikTok. It's not essential. Podcast, fucking live streams, it's not essential. So I'll do it when it's fun, but I'm not going to set that thing of like, oh, you know, everyone is going to tell you there's some other thing that you can do. It's a skill and it's a discipline to be an essentialist. To listen to that fucking, like, to listen to, you know, someone tell you, oh, there's this good opportunity, and for you to think, nope, it's not essential. There's a fantastic quote from this that I wrote on my wall, and you know, if I've wrote something on my wall and I've stuck it on my fucking wall, you know that it's like, there's some value in that. So, see that? Almost everything is noise. I love that. Almost everything is noise. When I read that quote and he's telling me like, yeah, most of the things that you're doing is just noise and you're just kind of like, it's a distraction from the things that matter. I was like, holy shit, like I'm actually like, he's totally right. I'm reading every comment on YouTube. I'm like, I'm just spending so much fucking time just doing stuff that doesn't matter. All that matters for me is the videos. That's it. That's all that matters. The videos on the main channel, videos on this channel, that's it. Nothing else matters. As long as these videos keep, you know, the videos are good, you guys like them and they keep performing well, everything else is like sorted. I can spend way more time on like the fucking Discord server or doing live streams or podcasts, but the thing is, if the videos slip, so do those things. So why not just put your time directly into them? And this essentialism, along with deep work and the 4-hour work week, it drastically reduces how much time you need to do your work tasks. And so people have asked me, like, what do you do in your free time? Whatever I want. Like, I spend hours in the gym. I take long rest breaks. I just sit in the sauna. I just go in the pool. I spend like a solid 3.5 hours like in the gym area, like the gym, sauna and pool and getting changed and everything. I sit around, I read for like 2 hours a day. I meditate, I journal. I do a lot of thinking instead. I do a lot of resting. I dedicate like 10 to 11 hours of sleep. I'm honestly, I'm fucking destroying any. I don't think that there's much competition right now because my competition are sleeping like 6 hours a day because they're working so much. They think that they're winning right now because they're working. They don't realize that the real work of like the knowledge worker, the person who uses his brain for like to produce, which is what we're doing here, like for most of us, the real like thing that makes you good at what you do is sleeping for more than 8 hours a night. It's eating clean. It's spending time with your friends. So oftentimes I do tell people, yeah, like I work like a couple of hours a week, 3 to 5 hours, something like that out per week. And they either don't really believe me or they think I'm taking the piss, or they're like, oh no, that would be depressing because like I wanted to work more than that, I'd be bored. But it's like, it's my choice now. This video is going to be 1.5 hours long, so of course like this week my work hours are going to be longer, but it's like, it's my choice to be here. I'm not being forced to, I'm not obligated to make this video. That's such a beautiful way to live life. And because I've cut down, because I've become an essentialist and I'm not doing some random bullshit other tasks like checking your fucking emails. Look at my YouTube profile picture on my main channel. Look at the channel art. Still, my sister comes to me and says, oh, you know, it's too old, you've got to change it, here's some ideas. And no, it's not essential. The fact that those, like, I've built this success, we've got 200k subscribers and it's going up fast with that shitty profile picture shows you, like, it doesn't make a difference. Anyone who's spending a fucking hour, some people spend longer than that, but an hour making their fucking YouTube logo or some bullshit, they're not going to be successful because they're focused on the stupidest, most useless part of the business instead of the highest point of contribution, which is the actual video. That's where I put my time. So even though I only work for a few hours a week because I've become so essential, it's like the rest of my life, the rest of the 128 hours or whatever, however many hours there are in the day, in the week, revolve around those videos. So instead of me being sat like a fucking caveman, spending hours extra just doing low quality work, I go out into real life. I go and do things with friends. I go on dates with girls. And that's the thing that actually gives me way more. Like, that's the thing that makes better videos for me. It's a very interesting topic, which I think a lot of people still disagree with. But at least for me, this concept of essentialism, of the 4-hour work week, of highly reducing your work tasks so you can live more and you can fuel those small work hours has been incredible. Incredibly life-changing. Greg McKeown has a second book that I've got here called Effortless. That one there. Focus, bitch. Yeah, Effortless. This book is not as good as the first one. It kind of has like a very similar concept, but this one is more about the fact that it should just be like quite easy to do work. So literally this was unfortunately one of those books, Effortless. So Effortless is like the second book next to Essentialism by the same author, Greg McKeown. This was one of those books that unfortunately it was a letdown, and it was kind of like one of those where it was just like a 1-sentence summary, which is like, yeah, like, your work should be effortless. It should feel like play. That's it. You don't need to really know much else. I think maybe there would have been more learning lessons, but at least for me personally, a lot of the book was just kind of shit that I either knew or I just read from his previous book. Here we have Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art by James Nestor, next to my thumb. So that's the book that I mentioned, aligned with the Oxygen Advantage. I personally prefer Breath. So Breath had a way better sort of storytelling, and it's the story of this scientist who voluntarily signed up to do this study on himself, where he blocked his nose and he just mouth breathed for like 2 weeks. His health deteriorated incredibly fast. So it's a very, very interesting story that like it's wrote in a very funny way and everything. So you'll probably enjoy reading it, and he just goes into like so much like detail of the shit that happens if you breathe from your mouth instead of your nose. And there's so many good quotes from literally like, you know, like Chinese provinces like 2,000 years old and everything, where they're mentioning like the dangers of breathing from your mouth and like you should only ever breathe from your nose. It's so interesting. Like this was literally how humans have lived for so long, and only in the last like 100 years we've really fucked it up. And I really like the fact that he brought in so much history with it. The TLDR of this book is what I mentioned before. The perfect breath, he says, is 5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out, nice and slow through the diaphragm, and obviously through the nose as well. We have Infinite Game, The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, next to my thumb there. This is, I only read like 50%, probably less. I literally just needed to skim it just to get, it's one of those books where you just needed to get like the idea, and like once you've got the idea, like the rest of the book's not that great in my opinion. But the idea was play the infinite game in the stuff that you do instead of the finite game. So finite game, to be honest, once you kind of understand it, kind of like, I was like, oh yeah, well that's common sense. But at least the idea is, okay, let's say in my example, the finite game is me thinking, oh yeah, like, you know, the thing that we're trying to do, the only thing we care about is hitting 500k subs or 1 million subs. That's like finite. And essentially once you hit that, you're just going to be going more and more. The infinite game is kind of like thinking of purpose instead, and thinking of like the meaning of all this. So it's not so much, you know, the 500k subs. It's just helping as many like young men as we can. The issue why I got disinterested in this is because the way to do this best, to achieve that purpose, like he said, is to set milestone goals like the 500k subs, so you know that you're going in the right direction. So it's like, it's kind of like, oh, like, well, I guess you're doing everything right then anyway. It's like, just have purpose behind what you're doing, and also view it as like an infinite thing. So this idea that if, for example, YouTube deletes my channel, that this would still be my purpose. I would continuously fulfill this purpose of helping young guys with self-improvement, with dating, with fitness, with mental health, but I'd do it on a different avenue. I'd be a pedophile and hop on TikTok or something. So it's kind of like a disappointment. Once I got that realization, I was like, oh, this book's kind of dead then, because the whole point they were telling you was like, okay, forget those finite goals, forget, you know, the goals of 500k and everything. Then eventually it was like, oh yeah, the best way to measure if you're achieving the purpose is with those finite goals anyway. So it was a bit dead, but at least it did kind of like click something for me where I was like, oh yeah, like just bear in mind that this is infinite. Even if YouTube deletes my channel, I'm still going to be doing the same work. So just make sure you're always holding this purpose with the intent to like help people. We have Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. So this is a staple. I haven't read completely, but I've got all 3 books. Ego is the Enemy, Stillness is the Key, and which is the other one? The Obstacle is the Way. I'm not going to lie, I don't really like them that much, because for me personally, it's kind of like, I just need to read the title, and then I'm like, oh yeah, like I can adopt what he's about to say. It's one of those where like he gives you a bunch of examples, and like he breaks it down into like different criteria. So for ego, it's broken down into like the actions that you can do, the choices that you can make and everything. And you know, it's really nice having stories, because I guess it's similar to the How to Win Friends argument that I made anyway. But it's kind of like, once you read the title, you kind of know, oh yeah, like ego is the enemy. You kind of just need to understand what the ego is and think, okay, let me just make sure that I stay humble and I keep humility. And so it hasn't been incredibly, like the book hasn't been that great in terms of, I've read like 42% of it, but just kind of keeping in mind to keep my ego in check has been probably like very, very helpful there. I think that's pretty much it. I'm literally on like the books that I'm currently reading, so I'll show you these. The book that I literally just finished today is The Almanac of Naval Ravikant by Eric Jorgensen. and Tim Ferriss wrote the foreword of that. That this is a book distilling this guy's advice. So his name is Naval Ravikant. He's like a very famous, very, very successful, very, very wealthy, but also very happy guy. And it's quite a mix to have. Usually you'll see someone who's really happy but not so much money, or you'll see someone who's really, really wealthy but not so happy. This guy's the mix of both. And so essentially this is like his wisdom on how to build wealth and how to build happiness. I'll be completely honest, the happiness section was very, very anticlimactic for me, kind of fell off. But the wealth section, especially the tweets that he's goes through, the first like 20 pages of this book was like life changing. I was literally sat there like getting goosebumps and everything, trying to like, figure this shit out. After that, I feel like I just kind of like skimmed it because it wasn't so important. And I felt like, at least for me personally, it felt like a bunch of the book was kind of like all over the place. But there was a bunch of good learning lessons in the first like 20 to 30 pages, which I really appreciated. The book that I'm reading right now, so there's multiple books. One of them is The Appearance of Power by Tana Guzzi. The Appearance of Power. And I'm literally just a few pages in, but it's about the concept of how to look more powerful through your appearance and what you wear. So I'm literally just a few pages in, so I can't give you too much advice, but it has been recommended to me a couple of times. And I think it is very important. There's a quote, which I'm just going to say in my words because I can't remember exactly, but it was that to improve your social status and also how you feel about yourself, the fastest and cheapest way is to improve your fashion, your wardrobe, which I really like. That's 100% true. We talk so much about the importance of like looks maxing and self-improvement. It's 100% like, your appearance is so fucking important in these days. Then why not just improve your appearance for $100 with like a new outfit, which actually like really looks good, looks powerful and everything. And like, I completely agree with that. I'm reading another book called The Way of Men by Jack Donovan. This is a book which explains the question of what is masculinity. So I'm 10% into the book right now, and it's based on masculinity is kind of defined as we are in gangs. So we're supposed to be in like gangs and tribes, and so masculinity is defined in that sense. But now that we aren't really in tribes anymore, masculinity is very like diverse, it's open to assumption, it's kind of like fucked up in a sense, and it's interesting so far. I'm liking like the rawness of the book. I'm liking the fact that it's a book about masculinity, it's a book about like brotherhood and everything, and those books are somewhat like rare for them to actually be like good books. Usually like the authors for those books are kind of weird, but I like this guy. There's a couple more books as well. I'm not going to mention a couple of these because I'm not really liking a couple of them, but the final one is Courage is Calling by Ryan Holiday. And it's kind of similar to the previous books of his Ego's Enemy and everything, which this is like his first book of a new series which he's doing on virtues. Courage is defined as the ability to do something that still scares you, which I really like. It's like knowing that even if you feel a sense of fear, you can still go and do that thing, which I think, at least for me personally, like the biggest thing that comes to mind with that is like approaching women and like getting over that fear of like approach anxiety, and I feel like it's helping with that as well. I would say that's pretty much most of the books. This is a long ass video. I'm gonna have to edit this video as well because the battery died like 4 times, but I'm sure there's other books that someone will say, wait, you've read that other book as well, like what do you think about that? But these are the ones that I have here. Yeah, mashallah. I do have Marcus Aurelius Meditations here, but I'm not gonna lie, like I've never really got into it. It's not really my thing, to be honest. Like I prefer the directness of like self-improvement books that just kind of like tell you the lesson, or at least like if someone was gonna distill Marcus Aurelius, I'm pretty sure Ryan Holiday has a book like that, but like for me personally, I didn't like Meditations. So I've just got that book lying around. But yeah, that is pretty much every book. It's as much as I can remember, much as I've got right now. That's every book that's helped me. So I hope this video is somewhat valuable, and I hope that someone in the comments has done like a timestamp of the books. Otherwise, you're just gonna be sat here going through them all. That took so fucking long, mate. I've been recording this video for like more than 2 hours. Do the hard work, especially when you don't feel like it. Mwah.